Well, hello out there in podcast land, and welcome back to the Front Row Network, the network for people who actually like movies and TV and pretty much anything else we want to talk about. And welcome to part 2 of our March Madness special, the ultimate 80s movie bracket. We are here. We have...
The hell is that? I don't know. Is that that's our theme music?
Someone gave Craig some caffeine after 8 o'clock.
So anyway, fireball.
We have gone through the first half of the bracket last week. If you haven't checked that podcast out, please do. You can find it in our feed and on our YouTube page. But we are now here tonight to crown once and for all the ultimate 80s movie. And joining me again this week, let's welcome back our esteemed panel and Scott. Let's start with Craig McFarland. Welcome back, Craig.
You guys didn't like my theme music?
I'm gonna hurt you.
I was just gonna go with it, guys. Hi, everybody. Glad to be back and glad to talk Dead Poet Society as the best 80s movie of all time.
Everyone vote against Dead Poet Society just to piss him off.
And those dulcet tones that you're hearing are the voice of Scott McFarland. Welcome back, Scott.
Hi, I come prepared with the gentleman who, again, was not in this bracket, even though he should be, Optimus Prime, and also Captain Kirk.
Fair enough. And rounding out our panel is Ryan Lutens. Welcome back, Ryan.
Well, thank you, but do you mean long-winded Ryan Lutens?
No, I don't. I enjoyed your take.
Not for Scott. No, for Craig.
Lou
you got a chip on your shoulders.
Lou missed this, but I came prepared with a Disney Cruise Line mug that holds 2 beers. I'm ready for the Iconics. Bring them on. And actually, our next guy that we have on, also a fan of the word iconic. So
yes, we are very pleased to welcome in, manning the command center tonight, Mission Control, updating our brackets and giving us some blow-by-blow from the fan vote. Please welcome in Mr. Jeremy Geckner. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the front row. And look, if I can do something that can top making Interview with the Vampire the best backup 90s movie of all time, it will happen on this podcast.
You idiots.
Yeah. This is why you don't vote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my voting privileges were taken away after that, but I do stand by the decision. So,
Jeremy, when you said you couldn't be on last week, I just told everybody all we had to do was vote for the worst option, and it was your vote.
It's true. I am a legendarily bad voter.
You're iconic, you would say.
I would say iconic.
So Jeremy's got a special role in this podcast tonight. What he's going to be doing is he's going to be keeping track of the fan vote. The fan vote's officially gone down as of 6 p.m. this evening. It is closed. We had a great response on Brackify. We had over 10,000 total votes cast.
Nice.
That's so fantastic. That's over 200 people filling out completed brackets. And so what Jeremy's going to be doing is he's going to be going through round by round and bracketing and giving us what your vote is, because what we know is as we go through this, we may differ than your vote. You know, you get a vote, you get one vote, but there's still 4 of us. So if at some point your vote got eliminated, Jeremy will be there to tell us which of the remaining films got the most votes in that round. You got that? Good. Perfect. Let's move on. So we're not going to waste any time. We're going to jump right into it because right now there is no game, historic basketball game going on, so I know I'll have Craig's full attention. We're going to go back, and we started with comedy last time, and we're going to go ahead and lead off with our comedy bracket with the round of 32. We're going to start off with our number 1 seed, Ghostbusters, taking on the number 8 seed, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Craig, is your TV getting a vote tonight? Oh, look at that.
No phones tonight.
Excellent. So do you have a vote on this?
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It's got to be, right? That's
Shut up.
I thought I wasn't allowed to talk. Come on, Craig, you channeling me?
What happened?
Did you just vote for Planes, Trains, and Automobiles over Ghostbusters?
Yeah. Oh, was it against Ghostbusters? Sorry, I was making a point.
Thanks for
Remember how we said we were going to go
Craig.
faster?
All right.
How many beers have you had already?
Wow. Okay.
Ghostbusters.
3 times.
Jeremy, do we have access to the graphic that we can put up to maybe assist young Craig?
I got it right here.
I'm good. Just
Okay.
Ghostbusters.
Okay.
Ghostbusters. My apologies.
All right.
Sakes.
Ghostbusters over Planes, Trains. Scott, what do you say?
I love Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but Ghostbusters is a much better film, period. The end.
All right, Ryan, how about you?
Ghostbusters, no doubt.
Yeah, I got to say, I love Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It's one of my just favorite movies, period. But so is Ghostbusters. And I think we talked about this a little bit last week, but I think if you look at the 80s imagery of what really represents the decade, I think Ghostbusters fits that way better than Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Jeremy, what say the listeners?
Well, the listeners in this particular matchup is actually you guys were on the exact same track. This is what won. In this round, it was a rousing defeat of John Candy and Steve Martin, 119-15 in favor of Ghostbusters.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on then to a closer matchup, a 4 seed versus a 5 seed. Two iconic movies from 1980, exactly the same year. See, I got it out first, right? Okay. And that is
Drink.
Caddyshack versus the Blues Brothers. Somewhere my dad is very mad at me for putting these two movies against each other, but he'll never listen to this, so that's okay. Ryan, let's start with you.
I got to stick with the hometown guys, Blues Brothers.
All right. And Scott?
You have the choice between a whole bunch of comedians on coke and some of the best musicians of all time in one movie, Blues Brothers.
I couldn't agree with you more. Dan Aykroyd is one of the best musicians on the planet.
You've been drinking some Skullhead vodka?
Hey, he was on the We Are the World recording.
He was, but they couldn't have done it without him. But no, yeah, no, I agree with you. I love Caddyshack too, but Blues Brothers has everything that you need.
Too.
Oh no, I like
Clarify.
I like Caddyshack also.
There you go.
As well.
Caddyshack 2 is atrocious.
Caddyshack 2.
Jackie Mason doesn't do it for you? Come on.
Hey, well, you know, it could be a guilty pleasure, which you can find all of those in our archives.
Nice.
But let's, Craig, how about you?
Well, I was paying attention this time. So I will say that Caddyshack is not a good movie. Follow up to last week. I don't get it. I don't like it. Happy Gilmore is the better golf movie. So I'm going to go for anything that's going against Caddyshack. That's true in this round as well.
Okay, so that's a clean sweep on our end. Jeremy, what say the listeners?
Well, first of all, I got to chide all of you for not letting Major League through. Joe Boo is very upset with you. But in this round, actually a quite close matchup, and not as many people chose these two movies. But as they are going against each other, it was a 55-42 victory for the Blues Brothers.
All right.
I voted for Major League. Just saying.
Thank you, Scott. There you go.
All right.
Last time Caddyshack, if you haven't checked it out yet, Netflix has the movie A Futile and Stupid Gesture, which is about the starting of National Lampoon. It's actually a movie.
Cool. Yeah, I know. I mean to check. I've meant to check that out, and I just haven't gotten a chance to. But so moving on, let's look at our a 2 versus a 10 seed, and I think this is a little closer than maybe the seeds let on. The number 2 seed Airplane versus the number 10 seed Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Craig, you're shaking your head. I'll let you start.
Why is Ferris Bueller's Day Off the 10 seed? This makes no sense at all. Ferris Bueller should win in this matchup. I like Airplane a lot, but Ferris Bueller is the 80s. It's a dare I say iconic movie of the 80s.
Much like Transformers 1986. Oh wait.
Ooh, a movie? Okay, now we're we'll have that discussion.
Man.
We just need to create a whole separate podcast where you and I fight over things, Scott. Because I think
I'm just rubbing Optimus's arm. It's okay.
Wait, that'll be movie fights like front row version.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So Craig has a vote for Ferris Bueller. Scott, what's your vote?
Ferris Bueller, because it's better.
Thank you.
Okay.
Airplane's good though. Airplane was one of the first ones where I got to continue to rewind the Betamax to see the boobs.
Yeah.
Okay, and Ryan, how about you?
This is a tough matchup, but I'm gonna have to go with the one that took down one of my favorites, which is Fast Time. So I'm gonna go with Ferris Bueller's.
All right. So my vote doesn't count because it's already 3-0, but I'm gonna go ahead and vote for Airplane again. One of these is on the AFI's 100 funniest movies of all time, and one of them isn't. Airplane's a great film with an actual plot to it, even though it has more of a plot than Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is as much of an indictment of Ferris Bueller's Day Off as anything. So I am voting for Airplane, but it doesn't matter. Jeremy, what say the listeners?
Well, this was a matchup that was chosen overwhelmingly by the fans, but unfortunately, the fans of Airplane picked the wrong day to stop huffing glue, as Ferris Bueller's Day Off wins 101-33.
See, now, if you saw Airplane 2, that had a plot. They went to the moon.
Jeremy, Lou, you can't continue to bring up the AFI comedy list. There's Something About Mary is on that list.
And it's rather
automatically.
That's a funny movie, man.
You know, to say that there's no plot to Ferris Bueller, I mean, any kid who wanted to skip school got their gumption from that movie, so they knew what they were doing based on what Ferris did.
Okay. Well, we'll continue. We can continue to discuss Ferris Bueller because it is advancing, and it's going to face the winner of two underdogs who won their initial first-round matchups. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation versus the number 11 seed, Eddie Murphy's Coming to America. I'm going to start because I know where this is going, I think. I've been on the losing side of a lot of these rounds, and I think that's going to be a theme throughout the night. And I love Christmas Vacation. But as I mentioned last week, I associate it more with Christmas than I do the 80s. And I associate Eddie Murphy with the 80s. For me, he was the biggest star of the 80s, and from a box office standpoint, he was. So I'm going to vote for Coming to America. And lest we forget Mr. Arsenio Hall, who gave a tour de force performance as well. So Coming to America gets my vote. How about you, Scott?
You're going to lose. It's going to be funny. I still think Vacation's a better 80s movie than Christmas Vacation, but I lost that fight, so now I'm going to vote for Christmas Vacation.
All right, Ryan, how about you?
Christmas Vacation.
And Craig?
I secretly have a thing against Christmas Vacation. I like it better than Vacation, but it's definitely not one of my favorite Christmas movies. And I really like Eddie Murphy, and I think that he deserves to move on in this tournament. So I'm going to go with Coming to America. Did I just shut down Lou?
You broke Lou.
He couldn't believe that somebody disagreed with him.
Actually, Mediacom looks to have broke Lou. Yep, he's gone.
No.
Well, Jeremy, it's all tied up. So
good
let's go to
job,
the listeners.
Mediacom.
Oh, there he
Okay,
is.
I'm back. I was frozen.
Lou, I voted for your guy.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Craig.
The listeners didn't.
The listeners didn't. And Christmas Vacation advances. I'm assuming that's what I missed.
No,
I didn't say yet.
Oh, look at that. Okay, so Jeremy, what did the listeners say?
Well, Lou, you
Surprise!
should pay more attention. I do appreciate how Coming to America won by 4 votes in the first round, so that's a true buzzer beater. But unfortunately, it ran out of steam here. 57-35, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
All right, so that takes us out of the comedy bracket, and that gets us into the action horror bracket. And we're going to start off with action versus horror. The number 1 seed, Raiders of the Lost Ark, versus the number 8 seed, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Ryan, does your love of horror trump Indiana Jones in the number 1 seed? What do you say?
I'm gonna lose this one anyway, so I'm just gonna say Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, piss off.
I said I was gonna lose. I said it. I prefaced it.
Damn, we're only in the second round, and this shit's getting real.
What to say? There's some animosity in here.
Okay, so Craig, do you have a different opinion?
do. Raiders of the Lost Ark is such a good movie. Sorry. I don't even know why that came out, Ryan. My apologies.
No, I kind of liked it.
Anyway, Raiders of the Lost Ark deserves to go on, and I'm sure it will.
Scott, how about you?
I'm going to vote for the second best Indiana Jones movie of all time, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, you like Crystal
Apple
Skull,
sucks.
eh?
Oh, shut up! Everyone knows Last Crusade is the best indie film.
It is pretty good.
Yeah.
So as much as I would love to give the nod to Freddy Krueger,
So do it.
I can't.
It doesn't matter.
Freddy Krueger versus Indiana Jones, who
Just leave it up to the fans.
there are two big. Okay, well,
Yeah, leave it up to the fans. I'm okay with that.
all right.
Me too.
Okay, we'll do that then. I will because I loved Freddy Krueger. I went as Freddy Krueger for Halloween when I was a child, which says a lot of things about my childhood. But
I
Yeah.
know your father. It makes sense.
Wait. Let's dive into this,
What
Lou.
did you say when you went to get candy?
yes, I believe I was in 4th grade.
Oh shit!
10 years old. I had the glove. I had the mask. It was amazing. So yes. So you know what? I'll go with Freddy Krueger. I'll go Nightmare on Elm Street. Just because of that awesome Halloween costume. So Jeremy,
How bad was it?
what do the listeners say to break the tie?
You know what? I will just say, Freddy Krueger, bigger pop culture icon than Indiana Jones. Tell me I'm wrong. Anyway.
You're wrong.
You're wrong.
We can discuss this later.
Do you think I have an Indiana Jones
You're wrong.
action figure line?
How many films does Indiana Jones have? All right.
Oh, give me a break.
3.2, I guess. How many does Freddy Krueger have, huh?
8.
There you go.
So Twilight is a better pop culture film than Indiana Jones.
Now you're getting it, man. Now you're getting it. Those
God,
sparkly vampires.
Oh my god.
All right. Well, this was one of the more lopsided wins. 127-12 Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay. Not really a surprise there. So let's move on to another 4 versus 5 matchup. This one's gonna, I think, be interesting. I think we got something here. The number 4 seed Top Gun versus the number 5 seed Aliens. Scott, let's start with you on this.
Yeah, I mean, since you really screwed over the sci-fi franchises on this bracket, I have to vote for Aliens, and it's also a better movie anyway. But I will miss making fun of the homoerotic volleyball scene from here on out.
All right, Ryan, how about you?
I'm gonna go with Aliens. Yeah.
All right. And so that's 2-0. Craig, you want to toss Top Gun any love?
Boom, 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 boom. I hate how much they use this intro in their film. So I'm voting for Aliens.
Craig, I can see you.
Goodbye, Tom Cruise.
Oh, man.
Goodbye.
Craig, can you just go like this for one time?
I gotta say something here. I'm having an existential moment
Just one?
Why it lost?
because
Over.
we're not even halfway through the round of 32, and I feel like it's incumbent upon me to be the contrarian. How did I become the Scott of this group? Because look, no, I love Aliens, and I think as Sigourney Weaver as Ripley is amazing. It's a better movie than Top Gun, hands down. Top Gun is so ingrained in 80s culture that the poster, the image of Tom Cruise and Kelly McGillis is their Danger Zone. There's lots of just visuals that symbolize the 80s better than Aliens does. So for its 80s iconography,
Mr.
I'm going to vote.
Get away from her, you bitch.
I'm not saying
Space
that.
Marine!
Again, we're not
How
arguing.
do you not have anything more 80s than Space Marines?
Tom Cruise and volleyball. That's what I got. And Kenny Loggins.
And Val freaking Kilmer, man.
So look at that
wingman any day.
Okay, so I'm gonna vote for Top Gun. I'm outnumbered 3-1 already. We've lost, but what do the listeners have to say, Jeremy?
Well, the listeners have lost that loving feeling, Lou. It is a 70-37 win for Aliens.
That's actually really kind of surprising to me. I thought the Top Gun would have had a better showing. Maybe it's Scientology's problem.
All right. So moving along, I have no follow up for that. So we're just gonna move on to another a 2 seed versus a 7 seed. Bruce Willis in Die Hard versus his Planet Hollywood co-worker, Arnold Schwarzenegger's The Terminator co-worker. I imagine they're back at the fryer together making up burgers and stuff. They got little hats on.
Playing the harmonica, like, I don't know, the recorder.
Yeah. Okay, I'll start with this one because I think I'll actually be on the right side of history on this one.
Oh, God, I hope.
Yeah, no, it has to be Die Hard for me for so many reasons. I'll keep beating the drum for this in future rounds, so I'll keep it short and sweet. The Terminator, I'll be back, is one of the most quoted lines in movie history, but it's not even the best of its series. It deserves to be on here, but it doesn't deserve to be Die Hard. Scott, what do you think?
Now I have a machine gun. Oh.
Fair enough. Ryan?
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
That's it from now on. We have to vote for the films with a quote from the film. New rule.
But all the good quotes from Terminator came out of Terminator 2.
I'll be back was Terminator.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
So, but does that mean you're actually voting for Terminator, Greg?
Well, yeah, because really, Bruce Willis is
What
kind of an asshole.
about Come With Me If You Want to Live?
That's Terminator 2.
No, it's Terminator 1. Terminator 1.
Oh, it is.
Is it?
So,
it's first and second. You're right.
No, really, though, Terminator 2 Judgment Day is such an excellent film that without Terminator, we wouldn't have had that. So I'm going to throw a little love to... No, I get it. But I'm just saying that I'm going to throw a little love to Arnold in this round.
Every action film from then on out has aped Die Hard, including Pacific Rim Uprising, because I saw it today.
All right. So, Ryan, what do you say?
I already said yippee-ki-yay.
Did you? Oh, that's right. You did. You
Motherfucker.
gave me your quote. Okay. So that's 3-1. Die Hard's advancing, regardless of what the listeners think. Screw you guys. No, I'm kidding. But Jeremy, what did the listeners say in this one?
Yeah, way to take my shtick, guys. Come on. Line quoting is my thing. Anyway, 89-47. John McClane is moving on to the Sweet 16.
All right. And it's going to take on the winner of 2. I think this may be one of the more brutal matchups in this round. The number 3 seed, the Karate Kid, versus the number 6 seed, Lethal Weapon. Scott, let's start with you.
I'm trying to remember a quote from Lethal Weapon and it's not working.
Oh, are you kidding me?
I'm too old for this shit.
That was part 2.
That's part everything.
What did the shepherd say to the other shepherd?
It's
Walk out of here.
Yeah, no, that is from part 1.
And part 2, he also has a toilet explode while he's underneath of it. But that's
Do you really want to do it? Do you really want to?
Okay, yeah,
that's just what I was going to quote, man.
Jump!
Come on,
let's go. I'll go with you. Okay. Yeah, Lethal Weapon. Because, Lethal Weapon.
Okay, Craig, how about you?
I really enjoyed Jaden Smith's performance. But
some people that actually listened last week, they've heard that joke.
I can't keep going with that joke anymore. It's got to be Lethal Weapon.
All right, that is 2 for Lethal Weapon. Ryan, what do you say?
Lethal Weapon.
Wow, I'm really surprised. I thought this was going to be closer because and maybe again this is a generational thing, but the Karate Kid to me is such it's the mid 80s. Those mid 80s movies hit that sweet spot for me. And like I said last week, if we were talking Lethal Weapon 2, which has the great poster and the introduction of Joe Pesci and the better movie, this would be harder for me, but wax on, wax off. I mean, Daniel LaRusso, it's the Karate Kid, and I think it's the only film left in this bracket that has Bananarama on their soundtrack. So I'm going to go ahead.
A loss.
So I'm going to go ahead and vote for Karate Kid again. I'm in the minority. I'm outnumbered 3-1. What say the listeners, Jeremy?
Well, Lou, the listeners, they agree with you, believe it or not. 47 to 66 in favor of the Karate Kid.
Man, our listeners suck.
Yeah,
Not that we, we love you guys.
Yeah, no, but see, I think there's something to that. So see, listeners, you get me. I appreciate that. Okay.
I still say one of the reasons why I'm with Lethal Weapon is because it's the only buddy cop movie on here, and that's just atrocious.
Fair enough. Here we go.
Jesus.
Okay, so that gets us out of the action sci-fi bracket and into the family bracket. And we're going to start with the number 1 seed, E.T. versus the upset special from last year.
Yeah.
The number 5 seed, The Muppets Take Manhattan. There was an upset in round 1, and based on what we talked about last week, I think there's going to be some contention here. Craig, let's start with you this time.
So E.T. really, again, it's an okay movie, but it's not anything to write home about. Or phone home about. So I'm going to go with the Muppets Take Manhattan.
Ugh.
Okay. Ryan, how about you?
Thinking about my childhood, I probably watched, E.T. relentlessly, and I maybe saw Muppets Take Manhattan twice. And E.T. was nominated for Best Picture, so I'm going to go with E.T.
This is why you're such a sad person.
It is.
It very well could be.
All right. Scott, how about you?
Oh, man.
For one reason and one reason only. It gave us the Muppet Babies. I vote for Muppets Take Manhattan.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the Muppet Babies are back on TV.
Yes. Yeah. I'm curious to see how that's going to turn out.
I haven't watched it at all yet, but it's back on TV.
How's the new DuckTales?
The new DuckTales, I watched the pilot, and it just wasn't my thing. But everyone seems to love it. Like it's
Lin-Manuel
David Tennant, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Sorry.
I've got a quick aside here. I don't cry in movies very often in a movie theater, because I see Pixar movies at home. So that doesn't. But as I remember distinctly crying at both of these movies in the theater when E.T. dies and when the Muppets go their separate ways after they can't make it, and they do that saying goodbye song. Good Lord, that hit me in the feels. And this hits me in the feels because I can't, as much as I love the Muppets Take Manhattan, I can't. Here's the thing. E.T. made more in its re-release than the Muppets Take Manhattan did in its original theatrical run. Ooh. So if that tells you anything about how big of a deal E.T. was in the 80s, I think you have to go with E.T. We wouldn't have Reese's Pieces these days without E.T. So for one of the best candies alone, I'm going to go with E.T. And tie it up, which means it comes down to the listeners, which is interesting because the listeners didn't pick the Muppets. They picked Little Mermaid last round. Jeremy, what say the listeners in the round of 32?
Yeah, so we have to go to the bare round of 32 stats here. Now, look, I'm not saying the Muppets didn't put up a good fight, but at a final score of 88 to 15, I think that this is a pretty definitive win for the extraterrestrial. Oh, Scott, you win the MVP tonight, man.
I'm one beer in. I am.
Can I put a plug in for Santa Clarita Diet?
Having a breakdown.
Dude, I love that show.
It's so good. Season 2 comes out at midnight because unlike CBS, Netflix
Dude, it's already out. I've watched the first 2.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, and I've watched the first 2. It's hilarious.
Guys, it's the 23rd. It is out.
Craig, how many beers have you had?
So
Timothy
the Muppets
steals that show.
Saying goodbye.
And the Muppets are saying goodbye as they are eliminated.
E.T. is such a slow-moving, boring movie.
Quit insulting the listeners, please.
Okay. We want to keep some people after this. Okay.
You know what? Actually, I'm going to agree with Scott that I hate when E.T. dies because I think that Henry Thomas freaking overacts that to the point where I can't enjoy it.
It takes an hour for the damn alien to die. Just freaking die. You're coming back anyway. Just die.
I know he's a kid and all, but come on, kid. Act better.
You know what? I was watching somewhere where Steven Spielberg said that his parents had, like, went to the kid and said, imagine your parents are dead. And action.
Thanks, Steven.
It took him a while to really learn how to work with kids.
Yeah, maybe he wasn't really that upset by that back then.
All right. So E.T. moves on, and it's going to face the winner of a 2 versus a 3 matchup. We have the Goonies versus Who Framed Roger Rabbit. 2 really big movies for kids in the 80s. Ryan, let's start with you this time.
Why do I have to go first? God, this one sucks.
This one does suck.
Did anybody have a coin they want to flip? I'm gonna say Goonies, just because when I watched the movie, I wanted to be like them. I don't know. I loved Roger Rabbit. I loved Bob Hoskins. I wanted to, but being a kid and I wanted to go on an adventure. Goonies.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll go next. I'll say I'm going to agree with you because I think, again, these movies are equally good, and I think probably Roger Rabbit's maybe slightly better of a movie than Goonies is, just as a film. But I think, Roger Rabbit doesn't get referenced as much as maybe it should, and how much it innovated technology and just the use of having every cartoon character you've ever loved, minus the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, in it, and also just a solid, great movie. But yeah, it's got to be, to me, Goonies, because again, it's so much ingrained into, if you just have to close your eyes and picture the 80s, you picture something like the Goonies. Craig, how about you?
Yeah, this is a tough one because Who Framed Roger Rabbit really brought about some really cool technological advancements, and I love seeing all of the Looney Tunes together with Mickey Mouse. Like, is that ever going to happen again? It's a really cool concept, really cool movie. That being said, I have to give it to the Goonies only because Sean Astin is a beautiful human being, and I've been able to be around him a couple of times in my life, and he just seems like a guy that I would love to have a chat with someday. And so if this ever gets back to him, I want to make sure he knows that we voted Goonies into the next round.
It won't get back to him because he already has a restraining order out on Craig.
Yeah, that did happen.
I will say this, though. I think we will get that. We will get Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse together again because eventually Disney's going to own everything, and so it's a matter of time before they buy up the Warner Brothers animated properties.
There's going to be some really cool. We just talked about Wreck-It Ralph 2 in our Beyond the Mouse this month, and there's going to be some really cool cameos in that movie. I guarantee it.
Is that one going to fall apart like the second one did when they enter the Candyland?
You mean the first
one? How dare
one?
you,
the first
sir?
one
Wreck-It Ralph is a
beautiful.
perfect film.
Wreck-It Ralph is amazing. Are you saying Alan Tudyk ruined that movie? Because he was great. Anyway,
you mean Alan Tudyk playing Ed Wynn?
Alan Tudyk win.
Lou is dying. Lou's dying right now.
So
milk my duds, Scott.
I want it to be clear to the listeners.
You just tell me to milk your duds.
It's his line, man.
We had a very, just a little inside baseball here, folks. We had a very
Craig's gonna okay
about staying focused, and somehow it got put on me that last podcast.
Craig, did you get too much sun?
And we're here debating 2 movies that are not on the bracket. So, fair listener, just know this.
This is Sweet 16 yet.
No.
Let's keep going.
Okay. So Goonies, it's 3-0 Goonies. Scott, you gonna make it a clean sweep?
Hell yeah, and I'll talk more about it next time. Oh my god.
Okay. Jeremy, save us. What did the listeners say?
The listeners never say die, just like the Goonies. 61-52, a very close matchup.
I would say. Who Framed Roger Rabbit is an amazing movie. Just again, as you mentioned, for the Daffy Duck and Donald Duck dueling pianos. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we should do a flashback on that because I really do think that movie's kind of gotten a little lost in history. I don't think people recognize it as much as we should, and it's 30 years old this year. So hey,
it's on my list for movies to steal.
Just a quick plug on that. The last time Brandon Davis and I did our top 100 films list, Roger Rabbit made both of our lists. So I think that it deserves more love too, Lou.
Sure. Good. So, but unfortunately, when we're talking iconic 80s, you got to talk Goonies. So it's going to advance. So that does it so far for our family bracket. Let's move down to the romance bracket, Scott's favorite bracket. So I'm going to let him lead on each and every one of these.
Excellent.
So we're going to start with our first matchup, the number 1 seed, The Princess Bride, versus the number 4 seed, The Breakfast Club. Go ahead,
This
Scott.
is evil, man.
Not really at all evil. No. I've seen both of them once apiece, and I'm good with that. So I'll go with the one that has Andre the Giant.
You know, Lou, that's solid logic on the pick, man.
I can't argue. It's got Andre.
And it's got the Grand Nagus from Deep Space Nine.
Okay. Yeah. Look, you got me with the wrestling reference. Okay. All right. Ryan, how about you?
Breakfast Club, romance isn't really a thing until like the last 5 minutes. So I'm going to go with the quintessential romance movie, The Princess Bride.
All right. Craig, how about you?
The better John Hughes movie is still in the bracket. And when you go back to our listeners, really, truly, the most requested movie that we have not done because we hate our listeners is to do a flashback on The Princess Bride. So it's got to be Princess Bride. It's a great movie, fun fantasy. I really want to read the book because the book now has commentary in it as well. So yeah, Princess Bride all the way.
Okay. I understand why it's advancing over The Breakfast Club, and I think, Ryan, you make a really good point about if you're looking at just from a romance perspective. But I got to tell you, I think Breakfast Club is one of the best movies of the 90s, period, and a statement. I think it's the
90s or the 80s?
80s. Did I say 90s?
Yes.
Okay. Well, in any decade, it's a great movie. I think it's the best of the John Hughes teen movies because, as I said last week, it gets teenagers. It actually lets them talk like adults and not two-dimensional stereotypes in ways that few teen movies ever actually do. And so for that, I remember watching that movie and thinking that movie gets it. And to me, it still holds up to this day. I don't know what you're thinking, Scott. If you've not seen it, you need to see it a second time at least, because I think it's a really great film. I can't believe nobody's made like a stage version of it because it would work so well in a theater. I would love to. I would love to see it. I'd love to see it advance, but it's not going to. So I'm outnumbered 3-1. Jeremy, what do the listeners have to say?
Well, another tight matchup here. Single digit deciding on the votes here. But hopefully the audience remembers The Breakfast Club because they lose 73-64 in the votes.
Wow, that is close. I will agree with you, Lou, that Scott should go back and watch both of those movies because they're both really pretty good movies.
Mm-hmm. I remember Princess Bride being pompous. I'm 100% serious.
Pompous? Audience. Let's just let this sink in for a moment.
It comes off
Scott
as
is accusing something of being pompous. let's let this moment sit.
This is why we hired Lou.
Okay, so Princess Bride advances, and it's going to face the winner of the number 2 seed, Dirty Dancing, versus the number 3 seed, Rob Reiner's When Harry Met Sally. I will start this round because, I think I just instinctively want to jump to the defense of movies I know are going to lose. Because I love When Harry Met Sally. I think it is so well written and so smart and funny. It's Rob Reiner and Nora Ephron. You don't get much better than that, at least at that period before Rob Reiner just went off the rails. It's Meg Ryan becomes a superstar out of it. Billy Crystal gives maybe his best performance ever. It's a romantic comedy that doesn't traffic in the stereotypes of the genre, and it defines some stereotypes. So I'm voting for When Harry Met Sally. Okay, guys, go ahead and let me have it. Let's start with Ryan.
I proposed after the stage version of Dirty Dancing because it's my fiance's favorite movie, so Dirty Dancing. Otherwise, I die.
All right, Scott.
What you're telling me is Princess Bride's moving to the Elite Eight because both these movies are like, good.
Wow.
What's the other one again? When Harry Met Sally and what?
Oh, I
Dirty
forgot. I was
Dancing,
going to let you
man.
start this round because you don't pay attention to this genre. Go ahead.
I really don't.
Then vote for When Harry Met Sally.
The one
Then
that Luke didn't vote for.
I'm going to lobby for you to vote for When Harry Met Sally because you don't give a shit either way.
I vote for the one that Lou didn't vote for.
Okay, that's 2 for Dirty Dancing. Craig, how about you?
Lou, here's the deal. I've seen Dirty Dancing, but I haven't seen When Harry Met Sally. But because you are such a great orator, you have convinced me that this movie is better than Patrick Swayze doing whatever he's doing in that movie. Plus, the better Patrick Swayze movie is Donnie Darko, right? So we're going to go with When Harry
For God's
Met Sally.
sake, man.
That is a deep cut.
Look, man,
Donnie Darko
I
is
love
a good
Donnie
film.
Darko, but maybe choose a role where he's not a pedophile, okay?
If you had to go on the street and you say Patrick Swayze movie, 3, 2, 1, go. It's not even top 3, man.
Donnie Darko.
I mean, first it starts with Dirty Dancing, then it goes to Roadhouse, then Tu Wong Fu,
Roadhouse.
all right?
No,
and
no,
then,
no. Ghost first.
Ghost!
No, Ghost can go to hell, man.
I don't know
He went
why
to
I'm
heaven.
talking like this
All right.
now.
So, okay. So Craig, you were voting for Dirty Dancing, correct?
No, I said When Harry Met Sally because of
that's
you.
right. Okay, so we are all tied up. We are 2-2. The listeners get to break up this one. Jeremy, what say the listeners?
Well, the listeners have had the time of their life. 55-38, Dirty Dancing is their choice.
That's not a surprise. I think that's Dirty Dancing. I think has stayed in the ether longer than When Harry Met Sally. That's and I'm okay. I'm working through it. So anyway,
It's gonna be all right, Lou. It's gonna be all right.
These are cutting me deep. So all right. So Dirty Dancing advances. It's going to take on Princess Bride in the romance finals. So let's move down to Scott's favorite bracket, the one that he just loves how I put it together.
Oh, hold on. I'm ready now.
So here's spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to put together, just like we did a 90s NIT, I'm going to put an 80s NIT together after we do this. And in that first round, I'm putting Star Trek 2 versus Star Trek 4.
And then I vote for Star Trek 2.
So you just sit. You can sit on that one.
4 is a better film.
Okay. So
No,
Scott,
4 is the better pop culture. 2 is the better film.
let's go to the movies that did make it to the big dance. The number 1 seed, Back to the Future, versus the number 4 seed, Gremlins. Craig, we'll start with you.
This is pretty easy. It's almost as easy as the one I biffed on earlier because I wasn't paying attention. So we're going to go to Back to the Future.
All right. Ryan, how about you?
Both are classics. I love both, but I got to keep with the horror element. I would vote for Back to the Future, but I got to keep some element of horror alive and go with Gremlins.
Oh, piss off.
Hey, iconic.
Hey, I will say this. I watch
beer.
Gremlins I do watch Gremlins as part of my Christmas movie marathon. I enjoy it every time. But Back to the Future is again that imagery. I don't think this is where iconic should be used because I agree with that. I'm voting Back to the Future. Scott, how about you?
I love Gremlins to death. I think Gremlins 2 is better, and I'm going to vote for Back to the Future.
All right, Jeremy, what say the listeners?
This might be the biggest blowout of the night. 121-12 Gremlins. Gosh, this is Duke versus Binghamton here.
Okay. So let's switch gears to what I think is probably the most interesting matchup in the round of 32. And that is the number 2 seed, The Empire Strikes Back, versus the number 3 seed, Tim Burton's Batman. This is such a fascinating matchup.
Oh.
I think we all have got some thoughts here. I will let Ryan start us.
Has anybody got a coin again?
Let me flip my Enterprise.
Yeah, Star Wars. I mean, Empire Strikes Back, 1980, right? Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it was excellent. I mean, it definitely blew away the first one. It got everybody really into Star Wars. But Batman is my favorite superhero, and Tim Burton brought that to life in a unique way. You cannot beat Michael Keaton. Everyone thought he was going to suck, but he blew it away. And Jack Nicholson is iconic. All right, that's the first time I said it in my speech, so I'm going with Batman.
Okay. Scott, how about you?
Star Wars Empire Strikes Back is a 70s film that was released in the 80s. If you want to go with an 80s Star Wars film, Return of the Jedi. I vote for
the other one.
Oh my God!
So you're just voting against Empire.
No, Star Trek so much.
So you're going.
What's the other?
Batman?
Thank you, Batman. I vote for Batman. Seriously, I do. I think it's okay. It revitalized superhero films after they tanked with Superman 4.
All right. So here's what I'm going to say because here's what I'm going to say about Empire. Because I agree with you slightly that because, yes, it was filmed in the 70s. It was released in 1980. So was the Blues Brothers. And we moved that on. Here's what I think, because we talked about this a little bit last week. I think this really is a generational movie. And this is what makes this so tough because you have 1980 versus 1989. When you were born in the 80s, because I think we forget that the number one toy line for the first 4 years of the 80s was Star Wars. 80, 81, 82, 83, Star Wars was the hottest toy line, and it's because of Empire Strikes Back. It's because of the originals. Transformers doesn't come out until the mid-80s.
I was about to say, what took over for that?
Actually, Masters of the Universe did first.
I love He-Man too, yes. And Masters of the Universe should be on this list too.
But they only come out. They only come out after. Dolph. I mean, here's the thing: they come out and they make a lot of money because interest in Star Wars goes away after Return of the Jedi. So if you're a kid that was raised in the late '80s, you don't have much of an affinity for Star Wars because Star Wars was pretty much dormant from 1984 to 1997.
What? There wasn't.
How many films were there? You're going to talk.
There wasn't videotape? How can I mean, you're saying people don't have an affinity for Star Wars?
No, I'm saying that it wasn't as popular of a toy line and it wasn't as hot of a brand. Yes, Star Wars existed. Yes, you could see Star Wars movies, but if you were a kid, if you grew up in the early 80s, Star Wars was a quintessential part of your childhood. If you grew up in the late 80s, it was there and you probably saw it, but it wasn't as much of a big deal as maybe Batman was when it came out in 89. So I'm torn because I think culturally Star Wars in that first half of the 80s is such a big deal. But Batman is also such a big deal. And I thought I knew how I was going to vote until I just started talking, and now I have no clue. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make it interesting, and I'm going to vote for The Empire Strikes Back because of 4 years of dominance of the 80s versus 1 year of dominance for Batman. So Empire, what do you say, Craig?
So I am kind of not cool with either of these being in this bracket, only because Empire Strikes Back, as I mentioned, Star Wars to me is its own thing. It doesn't belong to a decade. It's hard to classify as a decade. You made a very good argument with it. Batman, the more and more I come to think about Tim Burton's Batman, I think that that's what Zack Snyder watched in conjunction with the Miller Batman in Dark Knight Returns to come up with his crazy ass version of the DC universe, because that Batman really is not Batman at all. He shoots people. I get that it revitalized the superhero genre for a while, but then it really, I give a lot more credit to X-Men for doing that than anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and say for this round, and then I'm voting it out the next round, I'm going to say Empire Strikes Back.
All right, so we are at a deadlock, 2-2. I'd have it no other way for this kind of a matchup. Jeremy, let's turn it over. What do our listeners have to say?
Gee, let me guess.
Well, despite the Keaton love, the force is strong with The Empire Strikes Back. 89-20, The Empire Strikes Back is moving on.
I had Batman winning the whole thing.
So you chose Virginia then?
Right.
Wait,
okay.
Did you just say that? Did you just say that Empire Strikes Back is UMBC?
Yeah, dude.
Okay.
What would you call it?
Since it shouldn't be in the tournament
underdogs,
anyway.
you pick the Star Wars franchise. Okay, so that's going to do it for our sci-fi region, and now we're going to move down to the last region.
We're not out of the round of 32 yet.
We're 2 matches out. 2 more.
The fact that there was only 2 things in the sci-fi region still annoys me. Okay, moving on.
So I can't wait to see, Scott, you bring out your Dead Poet Society action figures for this next round. Because we have moved on.
Please tell me you have a Mr. Keating, man.
I have a gavel.
Okay. So we have the number 1 seed in the drama, Dead Poet Society, versus the number 4 seed, Field of Dreams. Craig, let's start with you.
He's getting on a table.
Oh, captain by captain.
Okay. Ryan, how about you?
Just because Craig told me to piss off, I'm going to go with Field of Dreams.
Okay. All right. Scott, how about you?
Does my Lincoln bust count as an action figure?
If Lincoln was in the bracket.
If you ever want a birthday present again, Scott.
It would make more sense on the bracket than Empire would, but sure. No, Field of Dreams is a really, really wonderful baseball movie, and as a baseball fan, I love it more than most. That being said, Robin Williams is my spirit animal, and therefore I vote for Dead Poet Society.
The one constant in life, Ray, is baseball. I love that speech. And then it's even followed up by a better line at the end, which is maybe one of the best final lines of a movie is, Dad, you want to have a catch. If you can get through that moment, not misty-eyed, you're a better man than I am. I am voting for Field of Dreams, so I'm going to tie it up. Jeremy, let's go to the listeners. What do they have to say?
This was a closer matchup than I would have thought personally, but the fans are seizing the day along with Mr. Keating, 64-47 in favor of Dead Poet Society.
In reality, Dead Poet's one of my favorites. Love it. I just had to throw shade at Craig.
You almost screwed the bracket in doing that shade.
All right. And to close out our round of 32, let's look at...
Hey, you got Platoon coming up.
Yes, a couple of we've got the number 6 seed, Oliver Stone's Platoon, versus the number 7 seed in Fatal Attraction. I'm no idea where this one's going to go. Ryan, we'll start with you.
2 great movies, 1 great thriller, 1 excellent war pick. I'm going to go with Platoon just because when I studied history at Western, my focus was the Vietnam War. So,
all right, and Scott, let's go to you.
Yeah, no, I think Platoon is an amazing film that not enough people have seen, and they should. And it is excellent. And it also is very much, again, 80s, because it goes back to the it's at right around that time where America is still trying to figure out what the hell it's supposed to do after it lost Vietnam. And that movie is a great part of that.
All right, Craig, and you?
Fatal Attraction.
Because he hates bunnies.
Well, I'll tell you what. As a hare, I shouldn't vote for Fatal Attraction. But I do think one of the most memorable lines of the 80s is "I'm not going to be ignored." And I think that character, Glenn Close's character from Fatal Attraction, is probably better remembered as a symbol of the 80s. So I'm going to tie it up here, and I'm going to vote for Fatal. So we're going to turn it over to the listeners. Jeremy, what do they say?
Well, the listeners are not ready to say goodbye to a few of our favorite soldiers here. 60-24 Platoon over Fatal Attraction.
Okay. All right. So we are out of the round of 32, and we have finally entered the Sweet 16. So Jeremy, do you have the updated brackets for us? Can you show us those?
I'm going to try to right now. Is everybody seeing that? Right there?
It's coming. There you go. Let's stop.
There it is.
Oh.
There you go.
All right, there you go. There is there's our final four for our comedy section.
Here, hold on. I'm going to lock Jeremy's screen because every time somebody talks, it goes away. There, now it's locked. Go for it.
All right. So there you see the final four in our comedy bracket. So let's not waste any time.
This is easy.
Let's get right into it. Number 1 seed Ghostbusters versus the number 5 seed Blues Brothers as it's shrinking into the abyss.
Yeah, turn your camera has to be muted while you do that.
That was so cool, man.
So let's do it differently this round. Jeremy, let's start with the listeners this round. What do the listeners have to say?
Oh, the listeners have to say on this one, well, it was a pretty easy choice once again. They Ain't Afraid of No Ghosts, 79-17 in favor of Ghostbusters.
All right. So, Scott, do you agree or disagree with our listeners?
I fully agree. Ghostbusters has. I'm going to start actually talking about movies now since we're in the final parts of it. Ghostbusters is one of the greatest comedies of all time, but also just as a special effects masterpiece of the 80s, it is amazing the work that they did in that film. So yeah, I go for Ghostbusters.
All right, Ryan, how about you?
I'm gonna have to say bye to Blues Brothers, and this one go with Ghostbusters.
Craig?
Ghostbusters 2 is better, but we'll go with Ghostbusters.
I'm sorry. I had asked for Craig, Scott. If you could pause that, Craig.
No, time out. I love Ghostbusters 2 more than most, but Ghostbusters
I love 2 as well.
A better movie.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm going with the clean sweep here. I love the Blues Brothers. It's a great movie. It's a great soundtrack, great memorable characters, but it's Ghostbusters. It's all the way.
Not
it's
showing it
moving
that
on.
RESPECT, are you?
It's moving on to the Elite Eight, and it's going to face the winner of Ferris Bueller's Day Off versus the number 11. Wait, it was Coming to America, right?
No, Christmas
Nope,
Vacation.
I wrote it down wrong. Okay, see, this is why I needed. I should have looked at the brackets when you put them up. Okay, here we go. Ferris Bueller's Day Off versus Christmas Vacation. Jeremy, what do the listeners say?
This is an overwhelming, almost here, win for Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 62-28.
All right. Ryan, agree, disagree?
Agree. Ferris Bueller all the way. It's to the point where, I do see it as a Christmas movie, but Ferris Bueller is a representation of the 80s. So, Ferris. All
right. Scott, how about you?
I'm going to go with the one that I watch more than the others. So I'm going to vote for Christmas Vacation.
Okay. And I'm going to join you, and I'm going to tie it up because, like I said, both of these movies written by John Hughes. And so any chance to advance John Hughes is great. And I think Clark Griswold's an iconic character of the 80s. I'm going to go with Christmas Vacation. So, Craig, it's down to you. What say you?
What's Craig going to do?
Well, I will preview this by saying that this is my final 4 pick out of the comedy bracket, even though it's going to have tough competition against Ghostbusters. But definitely Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Not even close. Not even in the same decade.
Craig, did we just agree on something?
We did. Piss off.
All right. So Ferris Bueller's Day Off has advanced. It will go on in. It moves on to the Elite Eight. Let's move down. See, this is gonna go a lot faster now that we're getting down to the nitty gritty here, folks. Back down to the comedy. To the action bracket.
Would you like to see it?
Yes, please. Let's take a look.
Boom.
All right, there you see it. The number 1 seed, Raiders of the Lost Ark, taking on.
I was waiting for a Lethal Weapon and Die Hard to happen. That's good.
Yeah, versus the number 5 seed in Aliens, and we got Lethal Weapon versus Die Hard. Let's start up at the top here. Raiders of the Lost Ark versus Aliens. Jeremy, what say the listeners?
Hey, I muted my camera, man. Okay, so Raiders of the Lost Ark versus Aliens. Not a shocking conclusion here. 87-22, Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's the fans' choice.
All right, Ryan, what do you say?
This is hard. You have face melting or you have chest busting aliens. So that I can't really go off the horror thing. I'm gonna go with Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Okay, Scott, how about you?
Aliens is a wonderful film. It deserves to be here with the Space Marines, and basically, along with Terminator and Abyss, which should be on here too, giving James Cameron his ability to shape film for a long time to come. But it's Indiana Jones in his second best film. I vote Raiders.
All right, Craig, and yourself?
So this is my this is going to end up being my pick to win it all after you assholes vote out Dead Poet Society. So it's got to be Raiders of the Lost Ark. To me, it's just it solidifies Indy as a franchise. Harrison Ford, I think of him more as Indiana Jones than I do Han Solo. That's just me personally, but Raiders of the Lost Ark, wonderful film, deserves to be representing this bracket, probably in the final, but we'll get there soon.
I'm pretty sure Harrison Ford would like you to think that way too, since he doesn't hate Indy like he hates Han.
Aliens is great. And it's got a lot of great lines, but maybe the most famous is "Game over, man, game over." Raiders advances. It's moving on. That's a clean sweep for that, and it's going to go on to face the number 2 seed Die Hard or the number 6 seed Lethal Weapon. Two very important action movies of the 80s. Yeah,
you said "game over" is the best quote. I'm gonna disagree and say, hey, Ortiz, you ever get mistaken for a man? No, do you?
Yeah, but that wouldn't have worked in as well with my segue. See, you're disrupting my segue game, man.
Sorry, sir.
Okay, so number 2 Die Hard versus number 6 Lethal Weapon. Jeremy, what do the listeners say?
Well, this is one where we disagreed with the fans, so I have to go to the stat breakdowns here. Now, look, Lethal Weapon didn't get the least amount of votes in the Sweet 16 with 8, but it's far below the 65 that were cast for Die Hard.
Okay. All right. So, Craig, what do you say?
Honest to God, this is just truly what I believe and not trying to scorn anybody. When given the option of these two films, I would pick Lethal Weapon nearly every time because it's got the comedic aspect to it. I do have some kind of beef with Bruce Willis just through my love of Kevin Smith. But Die Hard is a very solid movie. This is a very close matchup, but I would go with Lethal Weapon. So not dissing Die Hard at all.
All right. Ryan, how about you?
Two great movies. But, like Craig said, the comedy aspect of Lethal Weapon, and I believe there's comedy aspect in Die Hard with Ho, Ho, Ho. I'm going to look at this one in terms of villains. You have Joshua, played by Gary Busey, and Hans Gruber, played by Alan Rickman, and Rickman takes it. So Die Hard for me.
All right. So I gotta go with Die Hard as well. I think it makes a lot more, it changes the game for action movies, and maybe we'll discuss this a little bit more in what I think is going to be a really hard matchup next round. But for now, I'm going to go with Die Hard. Scott, have you voted yet?
No, I have not. And this is really hard for me because I actually love both these movies. But I'm going to go with what Lou said, believe it or not, a while back, and that is Lethal Weapon 2 is not only a better movie, but it's also a better 80s flick than Lethal Weapon. So if it was Lethal Weapon 2 on here, it would be harder, but I still think I would vote for Die Hard just because, as I've said over and over again, and I stand behind it, every single action film after Die Hard came out has aped Die Hard from then until now. Every single one. And so Die Hard is a much more lasting film. So I vote Die Hard. And
I get that. I mean, like, but I don't know. It's just something about, like you said, the buddy cop aspect of Lethal Weapon that to me puts Lethal Weapon over Die Hard.
Yeah. But even with Lethal Weapon 1, I mean, there wasn't much of the buddy cop yet. You didn't get the love of Riggs and Murtaugh until Lethal Weapon 2 when they were sitting on the toilet together, ready to explode.
But what about the buddy aspect of McClane and I forget the officer outside? I mean,
the guy from Urkel.
Yeah, they had a nice for a night. Yeah, for a night. I mean, they were very buddy.
Yeah, no, I did. They're both really good movies, but Die Hard wins hands down.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we're supposed to vamp now because Lou had to walk away from the computer. So let me talk about why Star Trek 2 should be on this list for several different reasons. First and foremost, aside from the Star Wars franchise, sci-fi in the 80s was in the doldrums. Honestly, it was bad, really bad. And the thing that turned it around was a little film on a little budget that wasn't supposed to make any money.
I can't imagine how pissed off he's going to be when he comes on and you're talking about this.
Yep.
It's true, though. Star Trek motion picture came out in 1978, I believe. And it made money, but it was a critical bomb. And so Paramount said, we're going to do this one more time, but we're going to give it to our TV guy, Harv Bennett, and we're going to give it a shoestring of a budget. And what came out was one of the best sci-fi films of all time. And that's why it should be on this list. And it's not! Hi, Lou.
I knew I was in trouble asking Scott to vamp a little bit while I had to attend.
I just talked about Harv Bennett and saving sci-fi on film.
I figured as much that you would just spend that time to criticize all my poor decisions, but maybe you've gotten
just one poor decision, sir.
Have wins now? Did I give you enough time at least to get it?
Die Hard wins.
Okay. Okay. All right. So it's moving on, and it's gonna face a really tough matchup in the next round. Next up, we've got the family bracket, and then we will take a look at E.T. versus Goonies.
Yes, for everyone that wants to see it.
Yeah, there it is. And so, Jeremy, what do the listeners say on E.T. versus the Goonies?
Damn it.
Excuse me, everyone, while I revamp this here for a second. So E.T. versus the Goonies. By the way, just personally, this matchup is quite a difficult one. This is also, I think, about as close of a matchup as we're going to get because, believe it or not, at a score of 42-40, that is right, a 2-vote advantage, the Goonies are still never saying die. They barely edge out Spielberg's E.T.
Wow, that is close. Scott, by your jubilation, can I assume that you agree with our listeners?
Yeah, man, let me sell this. Okay, so one of the main things about the 80s is Spielberg. I'll give you that. But Spielberg's got a lot of stuff on this list. And Spielberg was executive producer for Goonies as well, too. But also, one of the things we're missing off this list, and this is not a bash against you, Lou, I'm just saying, there was a lot of movies where it was about kids together making an adventure, which is like why Stranger Things... Shut up. E.T. was about one kid and Drew Barrymore being 5. And a bunch of douchebag kids who ride bikes. Okay. But no, I mean, this is why Stranger Things is a thing now. Because of the Goonies and Stand By Me and a few other ones, not E.T. Also, it takes E.T., that little bastard alien, about 50 minutes to die in the movie. And The Goonies is amazing, and it should win. Move on.
Okay, Craig, what do you think?
Love The Goonies. That moves on. We'll talk about it more later.
All right. How about you, Ryan? Do you want to give E.T. some love as it gets shown the door?
As much as I love it, I want to send it home. So Goonies all the way.
Yeah, I got to agree with everybody on this. I know I fought hard for ET in the last round, but I'm gonna concede this one because I do think, as I've mentioned about Goonies before, it's very much embedded in 80s culture and still very much so to this day. I think more so than ET. So it's going to advance. And that's the winner actually of the family bracket. Remember, the family bracket was only 8 films. The Goonies emerges as our best family film of the 80s, which is interesting because it's the only one that involves kids swearing in it.
Chuck, will you hold this for a second?
So it's going to move on and face the winner of our romance bracket. And that is the number 1 seed, The Princess Bride, versus the number 2 seed, Dirty Dancing, the 2 favorites from the top. And now they're showing off against one another, showing down. Jeremy, what say the listeners?
Well, the listeners in this one were a lot more definitive than the last one, and they are taking Wesley and Buttercup all the way to the Elite Eight, 56-14 in favor of The Princess Bride.
All right. Scott, let's get yours out of the way. What do you say?
Just to spite the listeners, I vote for Dirty Dancing.
Ryan, is your
I gotta say Dirty Dancing.
Do it.
I have to.
Do it.
No freaking way. This is no way.
I love The Princess Bride. I love it, and this is a hard decision. But again, I would die if mine didn't go with Dirty Dancing.
Craig, thanks strategically.
So I'm gonna go next because I want to make Craig squirm.
Because I love me, guys. I'm sorry, my mind is made up.
I love both of these. Well, then I'll at least let the drama play out a minute because I think both of these movies are 2 of my wife's favorite movies. As I mentioned last week, my wife owns 3 DVDs. 2 of them are these 2 movies. You want to know what the number 3rd one is, Scott? Would you like to take a guess?
Star Trek.
I'll give you a hint. You've been ragging on it for 2 weeks now.
9 to 5.
Yeah, it is. So between those 2, this would be a hard choice, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go. What were we at? 2-1 for Dirty Dancing. I'm gonna tie it up 2-2 because it's a pick'em for me. And I'll go with Princess Bride just to make it fun. What do you think, Craig?
Strategy, Craig.
I had the time of my life.
Such bull.
But now I'm leaving the tournament. I'm going with Princess Bride. Sorry, guys.
God,
It's a better film. It is.
It is.
Okay.
It's just a better film. Princess Bride, Jeremy, it won.
Princess Bride strikes me as that movie where everyone told you it was cool, so therefore you decided it was cool.
Oh, come on.
No, it's a good got movie. Billy God damn it. Watch it. You never watched it once.
All right. Well,
Scott, you're falling prey to one of the classic blunders and not the getting involved in a land war in Asia, okay?
So, all right. So we'll get to revisit this debate again because Princess Bride is moving on to the Elite Eight. And so let's move down to our last region. First of all, we have the finals of our sci-fi fantasy 2 big titans here facing off. The number 1 seed, Back to the Future, versus the number 2 seed, The Empire Strikes Back. Jeremy, correct me if I am wrong, as we're looking at a cat. Correct me if I'm wrong. But this is one of the closest matchups on our bracket, is it not?
This is one of the closest matchups on the bracket. 3 votes separates these 2 films. And this is kind of a decisive turning point when it comes to the fans bracket. And by a score of 57-54, they are staying with George Lucas's saga, The Empire Strikes Back, with a 57-54 win over Back to the Future, according to the fans.
That's a bunch of bull.
So, Craig, do I put you down for Back to the Future then?
You do, because, I mean, really, truly, if you think about the 80s, you think about Back to the Future. If you think about Star Wars, you think about Empire Strikes Back. It's two completely separate things. I mean, it's not... have never thought of Star Wars as an 80s film. It's never once in my mind popped in to go like, oh yeah, that came out in the 80s. I mean...
Because it wasn't an 80s film.
Nothing about... It's Star Wars. It's the saga. It's George Lucas. It's so many things, but it's not the ultimate 80s movie like Back to the Future is.
All right, Ryan, how about you?
I'm gonna have to agree with Craig on this one. I like what Craig is saying. How you think Star Wars, you think Star Wars. You don't think about a time period because it spans, the 70s, 80s, 90s. Because heaven forbid, Episode 1 came out in 99, and then the 2000s, and then 2010. So it spans decades. So it's not definitive to one decade. So I'm gonna go with Back to the Future, which Marty McFly embodying that young teenage angst rocking out in his garage. So
I'll repeat, what I said last time, but I'll make it more succinct. And I think if this panel was more people who were born in the late 70s and grew up in the early 80s, I think this vote goes differently. I think the listeners' vote may attest to that too a little bit, because again, if you grew up in the early 80s, Star Wars was the thing. Star Wars was a phenomenon of the 80s. So I get what you're saying about Empire, about you not associating Star Wars with the 80s, but it's probably also because if you, like I said earlier, if you were born in the late 80s, you didn't get to Star Wars until, you were maybe in the late 80s, early 90s. So as evidenced by my Lando Calrissian Burger King last year, clearly Star Wars was a big deal in the 80s, not just in any decade. But having said that, Back to the Future, to me, I agree. If I want to show somebody movies that represented films of the 80s, I would show them my Star Wars toys, but I'd show them the film Back to the Future. So Back to the Future gets my vote as well. What do you say, Scott?
All right.
I'm just going to keep it going.
Yeah, dude. Let the Huey Lewis roll.
Because, no, seriously. Empire is a 70s flick. I'm sorry. You don't think... you think Huey Lewis when you think the 80s. I don't care if you were born in 78 or 88. You think Huey Lewis. You don't think C-3PO. C-3PO is a thing that spans the decades, not the 80s. And the listeners are wrong.
All right, so we have overruled the listeners. Sorry, guys, but it was close enough where I don't feel I'm not going to lose too much sleep over it, because clearly Back to the Future had a lot of love as well. So it's going to advance, and then it's going to take on the winner of the drama bracket, Dead Poet Society versus Platoon. I don't know, Jeremy. Let's start with you. Let's go with the. Let's start with you and see what the listeners have to say, and then we will go to Scott.
This is a very curiously low vote total for both of these. So I don't know how, maybe this matchup just did not go the way that a lot of people thought, but by a score of 49-21, Carpe Diem continues to rule the day. Dead Poet Society is the fans' choice in this bracket matchup in the round of 16.
So since Lou is predisposed right now, he's busy oiling his robot. I will simply say that Dead Poet Society is one of the best. What are you laughing at, Scott?
He's busy oiling his That is a euphemism to end all euphemisms.
Anyway, John Keating is the best teacher that life has to offer, so Dead Poet Society has to win here. Ryan, let's go to you next.
Blues back.
Dead Poets is a great film, very uplifting, great message to it. But in the 80s, you had the reconciliation of the Vietnam War, and that was really brought to focus by Oliver Stone's Vietnam trilogy, headed by Platoon. So Platoon for me.
Okay. My vote doesn't count, right? We've established this.
No, it's 2-1.
It's tied.
I haven't voted yet.
It's 2-1.
Yeah, it's 2-1.
Oh, it's 2-1. Okay, Scott, I'll let you vote then.
As much as I think it's going to hurt my bracket down the road, I have to vote for the better film, and that is, again, for my spirit animal, Robin Williams and Dead Poet Society.
Okay. And now my vote doesn't count, right?
Truth.
Yes.
Should have got first.
No, because here's the thing. I have mostly been trolling Craig most of this time because I know his love of Dead Poet Society. And like I said last week, I ranked it number 1 for a reason. So I'm like, I don't want to make people think I think it's a bad movie or not a great 80s movie. I wouldn't have put it as a number 1 seed if I didn't. That said, personally, I was more personally affected by Platoon than I was Dead Poet Society. And I think you could look at both of these movies as representative of the decade for completely different reasons. I think it's a really even matchup. So Dead Poet Society is going on, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go with I'm going to go with Platoon just to give it a little more love and make it a little close on paper, but Dead Poet Society is advancing.
At some point we will make you turn in your theater degree. Just so you know, we will come after you and we will take it from you while you're oiling your robots.
He's busy oiling his robot. My God, the fact that you didn't realize that when you said it is amazing.
All right, so here we go, folks.
Okay, somebody sent me a message who's watching this and said, I see you're brandishing your starship again. So,
all right. So here we are. We have made it, folks. We are at the Elite 8. We've got the finals of family, romance, sci-fi, and drama set. Let's close out the last 2 genres and let's get down to the comedy bracket. The number 1 seed, Ghostbusters, versus the number 10 seed, the Cinderella story of this tournament so far, Ferris Day Off. Jeremy, what do the listeners say?
The listeners in this one, they have definitively spoken. A closer matchup, though, than I would have thought. 48-27, the Ghostbusters are moving on, according to the fans, to the Final Four.
Mm-hmm. Craig, your thoughts?
On paper, this is a 1 versus a 10, but realistically, this is a 1 versus a 2, and I have to go with the 2, which is Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Scott, you're shaking your head. I feel you have a rebuttal.
I have refrained from saying this until it got to this point, but Ghostbusters is the best comedy of all time. It is improv gold. It has some of the greatest comedians of all time in it, with Aykroyd, Murray, and Ramis. It stands the test of time. And again, the fact that the budget that they had, they were able to do effects that rival CGI today. And if you question that, go look at the new Ghostbusters. That looks like shit.
Actually, don't go look at the new Ghostbusters.
But seriously, the 80s effects hold up better than that. That's just something right there alone, just in filmmaking. Not to mention that it already is a better movie, a better comedy, and it has a better plot. Ghostbusters all the way.
All right, so that's 2-1 for Ghostbusters. Ryan, you want to tie it up?
I just want to preface this and say I'm not referring to you, Craig, but to go back to the quoting the lines, you found it? It's an ugly little spud, isn't it?
Yes!
It hurt me. Ghostbusters.
Victory!
100% for me, too. Like I said, issues that I have with Ferris Bueller aside, I think Bill Murray is maybe one of the biggest figures of the 80s period. This movie was one of the highest grossing films of the decade. It holds up still today. It got a sequel. It got a remake. It got a video of this franchise, and it starts because this movie is so great and embedded. And we haven't even talked about the song Ghostbusters yet, and the music video to Ghostbusters, which is maybe my favorite music video of all time. It's
so cheesy,
fun story
and terrible and awesome at the same time.
Fun story. That video was our first copyright strike on our YouTube channel.
Oh, it was it?
Because I interspliced it into our flashback of Ghostbusters, and I got a copyright strike. Not over Ghostbusters. No, they were fine. It was the freaking record company that made that damn video that gave us a copyright strike.
They got to make money any way they can these days. So, you know.
Well, he stole it from Huey Lewis to begin with, so what are you going to do?
Right.
I want a new drug.
Okay. So Ghostbusters wins the comedy region. It advances to the Final Four, where it has a daunting task ahead of it because it's going to face the winner of one of these two titans of action for the 1980s, the number one seed. This is a legit 1 versus 2, not like what Craig tried to pull in the last round. Raiders of the Lost Ark versus Die Hard. Let's mix it up. Scott, let's start with you.
God, as I've stated before, my favorite trilogy of all time is the Indiana Jones trilogy. And if this was if this was Last Crusade, I'd be voting for Last Crusade. But in terms of what I think when I think the 80s, I think Die Hard, and I vote for Die Hard.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, and I'm going to stack the deck a moment for Raiders and make it earn its money here, because here's the deal.
What?
Craig, I see the look on your face and you're telling me, but I'm going to use your logic for against Empire for Die Hard here, in the sense that Raiders of the Lost Ark is not a movie that most people associate, or that because it's not set in the 80s. It doesn't represent the time period. It doesn't symbolize the 80s the way that Die Hard does, for a couple of reasons. First of all, not just the action sequences and the way the action movie genre changed because of Die Hard, but some of the characters. We talked about Hans Gruber last week. Let's talk about Ellis, the coked out.
Only one of these films shows coke.
Businessman. He's wonderful in it. You've got the wisecracking John McClane, bucking what to that point had been the stereotype for action heroes. So I don't think it's going to win. I think we're going to see a good comeback by Indiana Jones, but I'm going to give some love to Die Hard. I'm going to give it my vote to advance to the Final Four. Go ahead, Craig. Let me have it.
Guys, Raiders of the Lost Ark is a wonderful piece of cinematic whatever. It's so good that truly Die Hard is a good movie. I'll give it that. Die Hard 3 was better. But you know,
Die Hard 3 is the second best of the franchise.
I'm done. I'm out.
My God.
Anyway.
Die Hard 3 is the second best of the franchise.
I like the fourth one with Tilly.
It was a good
Raiders
year,
of the
folks.
Lost Ark is my vote. That's all I got to say.
All right. Ryan, how about you?
Can we hear what the listeners have to say? I want to.
Yeah, okay. So, Jeremy, what do the listeners have to say? Are they going to tie this up and make Ryan cast the deciding vote?
Well, the listeners are kicking John McClane's ass out of that Nakatomi Plaza 59-28 in favor of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
All right, Lutens.
It
is down to you, 2-2.
Both of these are great movies. They are iconic for what they are. You have an adventure film and you have a shoot 'em up. And shoot 'em up paved the way for future action movies. You kind of lose that adventure thing. So I am going to use a quote from the movie and say to John McClane, "Welcome to the party, pal."
Oh my God!
This is why Donald Trump is president, right here, because Ryan Lutens gets a vote. We need to get rid of him in this country.
In the hierarchy of terrible people right now.
It is the right vote.
In the hierarchy of terrible people in the country right now, it goes Donald Trump, Paul Ryan, and Ryan Lutens. So,
I love the fact that I was the first one to start doing
and only
this.
2 of those that slept with Stormy Daniels.
If it was Last Crusade, it would be
one.
going forward.
Okay. All right. So Die Hard upsets Raiders of the Lost Ark to advance to the Final Four. We got one half of the Final Four figured out. Now let's get to the other half.
Jesus.
And here is
Guys,
your genre
seriously,
battles.
how did we even do that? We failed. This is Interview with the Vampire Part 2.
That is no. We'll talk about Die Hard again next round because it's winning. But I disagree with you vehemently, and we're gonna move on.
Real quick, can I chime in?
Yes.
We have our first person in the chat room to go and completely just knock somebody's head off, and it's awesome. Ludens, this is for you. Cavern Stone says the line is "Welcome to the party, Powell." The officer's name was Powell.
That's right.
Wait a minute. That's true?
Yes, it is true.
It's Powell.
Welcome to the party, Powell.
Wow. I have to rewatch the movie now. It changes everything.
You should, because it's a great movie, not just a good movie.
To my defense, I said Powell because John McClane said Powell.
Quite possibly one of the best films of the 80s. We'll find out.
Okay.
What a sad day this is.
So let's move on. No, but I think you're Craig. Just before we're not going to talk about Raiders anymore because it lost. So let's talk about it one more time. I think Indiana Jones, to use your verbiage for Star Wars, Indiana Jones is timely. I think Indiana Jones is, but it doesn't belong to the 80s. It belongs to the rest of the time. And let me point out something. You remember back when we did the 90s bracket, I was a young, fresh-faced podcaster with the front row. And we talked about The Matrix.
Ugh.
And we talked about how the sequels for The Matrix ultimately doomed it in the brackets. You held up The Matrix sequels and punished the original.
The presence of the amazing Phil Twister, though.
This is payback.
Finish this.
This is payback for the nuclear fridge.
Oh my God!
Okay. All right. At least you went there. I thought you were going to bring up Temple of Doom, and I was going to.
No, I love Temple of Doom. I love Temple of. I was
going to drive 3 hours and punch you.
You told me stand right here. I stay right here.
Oh, good Lord. Send your letters to Ryan Lutens.
Remember what I said, that Ryan Lutens is the reason Trump was president? He just proved it.
Okay. So let's move away from this. And let's move to another confusing stereotype. The Goonies made it to the Elite Eight, and it's taking on the Princess Bride in a family versus romance showdown. Jeremy, let's start with you. What do the listeners have to say?
Well, the listeners, I don't know if I quite agree with them on this one. But by a clip of 20 to 35, the Princess Bride is the first vote cast. It is the winner of this bracket from the fans.
All right. Ryan, do you agree or disagree?
I'm going to go with the Goonies. I'm going against what my fiance would say because I love both movies. Princess Bride is excellent. I remember taking a class in high school, Heroes of the Page and Screen, and we actually had to read The Princess Bride, and it was kind of cool. Anyway, Goonies never say die.
All right. Craig, how about you?
Sean Astin is a really cool dude. And I like The Princess Bride a lot. It's a movie that, for whatever reason, Scott has decided to keep off our flashback list for too long.
I didn't decide to do that. Just haven't done it.
Just send your hate mail to Scott at scott.com.
Scott.com.
And anyway, It's definitely got to be The Goonies. It's a wonderful film. And now that my top choice still is alive for the moment, my second choice is now dead. My third choice would be The Goonies. So I've got to ride something into the championship here.
All right, so that's a 2-1 for The Goonies. Scott, you want to tie it up, or do you want to go with The Goonies?
Gee, what am I gonna do? No, The Goonies. I mean, God, when I think back to my childhood, I remember watching that movie so many times, and I had the HBO recording, so I had the octopus scene for most of that.
Nice.
Just saying, that's my street cred for Goonies. But no, Goonies is an 80s film. It is potentially the 80s film. I vote for Goonies.
All right. And so that's going to do it. So my vote does not count. So I will eulogize Princess Bride a little bit here and just say, I think Princess Bride was a really important film for a lot of people. And I think Princess Bride, I don't think it's I think it's one of those movies. Again, maybe one of the short-sighted things we did here was we didn't have a female on this panel, because I don't know if there's most of the female friends I have that grew up in the 80s adore the Princess Bride, and deserves to win the romance bracket. I don't know if that would change the votes, but Princess Bride is a great 80s film. But again, it's the period piece part of it that maybe makes it a little less in my mind of an 80s film. So I will vote with The Goonies, and it's going to advance to the Final Four, and it's going to take on the winner of our sci-fi fantasy bracket or the winner of our drama bracket. It is Back to the Future versus Dead Poets Society in a matchup.
Two very similar films here.
Okay, so we've got two clashes of styles here. Interesting where we're gonna go. Let's start. Let's here, because I know what his vote's gonna be, but I want to hear him squirm just a little bit.
You cut out right when you said who to go next, just so you know.
Craig.
There you go.
So here's the deal. Marty McFly is a wonderful character. A wonderful trilogy. I really love Back to the Future. It's a great film. Both of these movies kind of pseudo take place in the 50s, which I think is kind of funny. That's probably the only connection that they possibly have to one another. But Dead Poet Society, again, coming back to coming of age films defined the 80s. And Dead Poet Society, in my opinion, is the best written coming of age film. It holds up the most out of all of the films that came out of that time period in that genre. And so I do think that it's probably leaving us right now because so many people are in love with Back to the Future, and that's a valid love to have. It's not like Ryan Luton's in the last round. So I will say my piece. I love Dead Poet Society, and Robin is always my captain.
All right, Ryan, how about you? Craig, I still hate you. When I think about sci-fi or drama, both these are excellent films. I have to go with what I prefer my movie types, and I do enjoy a good drama. So, Craig, I'm going to go with you and say Dead Poet Society.
Whoa.
Everything bad I ever said about you, I still believe, but I'm really happy that you did that.
All right. So there you go. So we are at 2-1. Or no, we're 2-0 for Dead Poet Society. Scott, how about you?
By the way, the better Huey Lewis song from the soundtrack.
Yeah, but everyone thinks Power of Love first.
Yeah.
But Back in Time
is the better song.
Back in Time is the better song because it talks about Doc Brown.
Right.
Now, this is a hard one, honestly, but because again, Rob Williams is my guy. But we're talking about the ultimate '80s film, and everything up here on the Final Four is going to be an '80s film, and Back to the Future is an '80s film, and Dead Poet Society is not. So, Back to the Future.
Yeah, I got to agree. And here's the thing we haven't even talked about yet with Back to the Future. And I think we've been waiting to talk about Back to the Future because I think we knew it was going to go deep here maybe. But if you want there are a few stars as big in the 80s as Michael J. Fox. And this is between this and Family Ties and Teen Wolf, he is everywhere in the mid 80s. And he's a huge star, and this movie makes him a very iconic. It's been a minute since we've used that word, symbol of the 80s.
I'm out of beer.
So I am too. But
who's this Michael J. Fox you talk? The one I saw was with Eric Stoltz.
that explains.
He's from a parallel universe.
So no, yeah, they replaced Eric Stoltz and got Michael J. Fox, and he nails it. This movie has so many images that are just deeply embedded with 80s culture. I think Back to the Future deserves to advance over Dead Poets Society. I think Dead Poets Society is a great representation of the drama bracket, but ultimately, yes, Back to the Future is going to advance. So here we are.
No, you don't. It's 2-2 right now.
But sorry, it's 2-2.
Before you go to Jeremy, I want
to... Pardon me, listeners. Jeremy, what do the listeners say?
Scott, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to say, before you go to Jeremy, going back to the chat room again, somebody pointed out, it's a Cavern again, Robin Williams deserves to be in the top 4. I agree with you, Cavern, but somebody forgot to put Good Morning Vietnam on this bracket. So
I'd have voted that over Platoon.
Yeah, I would have voted Good Morning Vietnam until I'm blue in the face, but it's not here. So, Jeremy, go ahead.
Well, because we broke with the tradition here, I had to go to the breakdown stats, and it was not as close as I'm sure Craig or Ryan would want. 44-11 in favor of Back to the Future into the Final Four.
All right, so our Final Four is set. We've got this is just a great Final Four. Kudos to everybody involved. This is some fun stuff. So let's not waste any time. Let's get to the winner. There it is. Let's take a look at it.
Maybe.
Hold on. I'm working on it. There.
I'm quiet so that it can show up.
Die Hard just doesn't, guys. Die Hard just doesn't belong there. It doesn't even even register.
What's really annoying me is that he went out and found like the most non-80s Die Hard logo he could have found. That's like from the Die Hard Blu-ray set from a year ago.
You can see a little bit of the wife beater in there.
Yeah, man.
Okay. So here we go. We've got our Final Four. There it is. Ghostbusters, Die Hard, Goonies, Back to the Future. Let's start off over with our comedy versus action, Ghostbusters versus Die Hard. Craig's chomping at the bit here to trash Die Hard. So go ahead, Craig. Speak your piece.
Well, I think that Scott has done a good job of manipulating all of you to get his movies into the Final Four because I feel like this is his Final Four more than anybody else's. But
don't hate the player, hate the game.
Die Hard simply does not belong in the same caliber as any of the three of these other movies when we're talking about the 80s.
Wrong.
Guys, it's just not like when you go back and watch that movie and judge it based on the other three that it's up against at this point, it is just not a good movie. So
our father would not approve of your lifestyle.
Okay. Ghostbusters.
So Craig, I'm going to jump in here because I would like to, as much as Scott and I have duked it out in these past 2 episodes, this is not just his Final Four.
When I feel love,
this is well, I get your point. I'll get to you too, Ryan. But Craig's assertion is that he feels Scott has manipulated this bracket, and I will say to you, good sir, he has not, because this is, if you were to look at my bracket, my Final Four are these 4 movies.
Wow.
So this is what I put up.
Well, that's because you put Back to the Future and Goonies in different categories. Like, how does that even happen?
Back to the Future is not a family movie.
It's a sci-fi movie.
Did I miss the time?
We would have lost to Wrath of Khan if we
Anyway, I'm sorry.
Okay. Here's the thing about Die Hard is a better movie than you're giving it credit for. It's actually a movie that when I taught a survey of theater class, I actually showed Die Hard to show plot structure because it is a well-written, well-crafted film in the action movie genre. It may be, if we were to do an action movie bracket, it may be the best action movie ever made. So it's
a really good prequel to Family Matters.
What the hell?
Oh my god!
Can we just move on, please?
Okay.
Powell moves to Chicago and changes his name.
Yeah.
Winslow. They'll never know.
Be accosted by a different kind of villain.
Still loves his Twinkies.
I think you are just selling Die Hard short and not it's a great film. It's not a good film. It's the best of its genre.
Well,
that said, I agree with you in terms of the 80s.
No.
And I'm going to side with you in terms of what should advance. I think Die Hard's the best action movie of the 80s, but it's not the best 80s movie. Ghostbusters is better. It gets my vote. Ryan, I'm sorry I left you out on that, but I got drug into some family.
Craig's walking away.
He just mic dropped that.
I haven't voted yet either, so don't say you just left him out.
Yeah. Ryan, no, well, I left you out. I referenced you in the discussion.
Yeah, I got you.
Ryan, what do you say?
These when I think 80s, I think of these four movies, and the reason why I think of Die Hard is because it kept the action hero alive. And where you have a good hero, you have a good villain, and that matchup between Gruber and McClane, I mean, it was very good, and it's things that you remember. I mean, people call it a Christmas movie because it takes place during Christmas. It's not really a Christmas movie. It's an action movie, and people make that case. I watched it this Christmas because I think it's a Christmas movie as well.
Because it is.
Just because it has gratuitous violence, cocaine use, employee sex on a table. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can list there.
To some people, that is Christmas, Luton.
Right. For me, it's when I think of movies I watched growing up, and I thought action movies, it was Aliens, Predator, and Die Hard. So I'm happy that it has a place in the final four. But Ghostbusters, as Scott said, and as everyone would probably agree, is one of the funniest movies from that decade, and it has lasting powers. And of course, it's got the horror aspect. So I am going with Ghostbusters.
Ferris Bueller was better, but I mean, it's okay.
No, it wasn't. Shut up. Can I put this to bed, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. You're right. You have the best action film of the 80s against the best comedy of the 80s, and the winner is
Scott's got the sound effects working tonight, man.
copyright strike. Here we come.
Yeah.
Bring it, YouTube. You won't let me monetize anyway, you bastards. Done.
So what the viewers say?
Yeah, so not for nothing here. I'll jump in here as I think Lou's mic might be muted or something. But interestingly enough, that even though Ghostbusters has already advanced, when these two were pitted up against each other in the final four, only 2 votes separated them as it was a 19-17 win narrowly for Ghostbusters.
That's because, unlike Craig, who doesn't understand the 80s, Die Hard is a huge 80s flick.
Yep, it's an 80s staple. Hands down, it's one of the best 80s action movies. It is.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of the 80s as corny and over the top, then you think Die Hard.
Well, there is a movie called Over the Top, but that's for another day.
I think
you're just
Lou's
talking
dead.
to yourself.
Am I back on?
Yeah, you're on.
Okay.
Stop
Craig,
unplugging it. Hold on, I can do that. Hold on.
How does that feel, Craig?
There, muted. He's done.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So Ghostbusters makes it to the finals. It's going to face the winner. This is a good one. This is man. These just get tougher and tougher.
This matchup is evil, Lou. This is an evil matchup.
That's how these brackets were designed for a purpose, and it's serving its purpose. Here we go. Goonies, the winner of its region, the family region over the romance region. it's going to take on Back to the Future, which wins the sci-fi region and defeated the drama region. So here we go. Goonies versus Back to the Future. Craig, what horrible take do you have for us now?
Well, the Goonies, of the remaining few that are standing, the Goonies is the best movie of the bunch. So the Goonies, Never Say Die. Sean Astin, please respond to my voicemails and text messages. I'd love to talk to you sometime.
Oh, God.
I told you, restraining order.
Good Lord. Okay. Ryan, how about you?
Good. Yeah. I own both. I own every movie in the Final Four. I don't know how to vote.
Well, congratulations on that.
I literally need a coin on this one.
And a star on your show.
You have Back to the Future. You have the Goonies.
Yes, we do.
I thank you, asshole.
Fast and loose on this episode. I like it. Listeners are gonna hate it, but
not so much on the fast, but definitely on the loose.
I'm gonna go with the Goonies. It's just growing up as a kid. I remember just wanting that adventure, so that lasted for me. So Goonies.
Okay, Scott, how about you?
This one, you have the second best sci-fi film of the 80s and the best adventure family film of the 80s. So this Final Four is almost perfect. And oh God, I still haven't decided. If this was Back to the Future 3, which is the best of the trilogy.
Oh, wow.
Even with the kid pointing to his crotch?
Yeah, that's the best part. And his name was Jules, and his brother's name is Vern, by the way.
Yep.
No, with the terrible Irish accent?
Seriously, they both are amazing movies, but for me personally, there was one film that I watched over and over again as a kid, and when it's on TV, I will stop and watch it every single freaking time, and it is...
Dude. Unbelievable.
Tiffany, huh?
Not Tiffany.
Cyndi Lauper, man.
Cyndi Lauper. Tiffany. I think
Good
we're
enough.
That was for Joe.
No.
Oh, God.
Cyndi freaking Lauper.
Way over my head there,
Okay.
Lutens.
So we talked in the last round about how this was my Final Four, but this is not my Final Two. Goonies is advancing. That's 3. I'm going to vote. I have to vote Back to the Future because I think both of them are equally representative of the decade. Both of them had Back to the Future was a bigger hit than Goonies was. They came out the same year. Back to the Future made more money. Back to the Future spawned 2 sequels. Goonies did not. Back to the Future is still
Goonies didn't need a sequel. They said it all when they needed to.
Yeah. Back to
Goonies
the Future
had an amazing NES game called Goonies 2.
You still have Goonies, Back to the Future references still made when Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox got together on Jimmy Kimmel. It broke the internet. Back to the Future is a better written movie than Goonies is. I love Goonies. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to trash Goonies, but of these two, Back to the Future is equally iconic to Goonies, but it's also a better movie. I can't believe it's not advancing, but it's getting my vote. Jeremy, say the listeners.
Well, this might be the biggest disagreement you guys have with our fans because when these two were pitted up against each other, 32-8 in favor of Back to the Future in this matchup. So I'm personally happy to see this, but the fans probably not.
So, though, it's good that that Marty has a mentor that he went up against because Doc Brown's a terrible mentor compared to John Keating, who is sitting at home now because of your votes.
Reading his Walt Whitman, dude.
Luckily, Marty can. Anyway, he'll be consulted.
But Marty also is another teen who figures things out and comes to a realization on his own and doesn't need some adult holding his hands quoting Walt Whitman.
He just needs destroying the space-time continuum to fix his screw-ups. That's all.
So anyway, Okay, so here it is, folks.
Neil never made out with his mom. I'm just saying.
The moment of truth. There it is.
The G's.
Our final bracket, our final matchup: Ghostbusters versus the Goonies. For the title of the ultimate 80s movie. Scott, how happy are you right now?
Craig was right. I manipulated this beyond belief because I kept voting for stuff knowing it was going to lose to other stuff because these are my two favorite films of the 80s. I so played this bracket like no other. I love it.
Explain this to me, because
you know what? There's no Interview with the Vampire to screw up my plans this time.
who among us did you play, good sir?
I voted for stuff that would actually go up against stuff that would actually lose. So, for example, let's see. I voted for Dirty Dancing several times that I didn't need to, but it was able to knock some stuff out before it got knocked out by the whatever the hell that movie is that Craig wants me to say.
So wait a minute. So you're basically telling me you've been operating like a Russian troll farm this entire time?
Well, it would be the first time you called me a troll.
A Russian troll?
No, but Goonies and Ghostbusters, best movie.
I'm sorry, but this might not be the matchup you had, Lou, but this is a damn good matchup when it comes to the 80s.
It is a great matchup. No arguments here. It's not my matchup, but like I said in the last round, I love Goonies, so no shade here on Goonies from this guy.
And by the way, since I don't get a vote in this, I'll just tell you right now, if I did, the Goonies would be winning this matchup. Just saying.
Yeah. Well, and my ultimate goal was to make sure Empire didn't get here because I knew we couldn't win against Empire, so I had to get that out quick.
Okay, well, before we crown our winner, let's just go through a couple of things real quick here. So you mentioned Empire Strikes Back. It actually wins the entire bracket on Brackify. If you go there right now, the voting's closed. You'll see it actually. Not only does it beat Back to the Future, it went on to win the whole thing. It got the most votes for the championship round.
Against Raiders.
Yes, but Lou, you're probably going here, but like,
go ahead.
The stats on this are astounding. So you're right. Empire gets the most championship votes at 25, but it also has over 100 less than the top vote getter in the whole tournament, which is Raiders of the Lost Ark. So Empire got 386 total votes in the tournament. Raiders of the Lost Ark got 487 total votes.
What that tells me is the Star Wars fans had one mission and everyone else kind of played it right.
Well, but here's what it also tells me is that everybody loves Raiders of the Lost Ark, but not very many people think that it's the ultimate 80s movie because it's actually third in our championship votes. So of all the brackets that got filled out, two movies above it were voted to win the whole thing more than Raiders were. Jeremy, would you like to share what those are?
Yeah, so in the championship round, Empire got 25, and then Back to the Future was the second championship round vote getter with 17. Raiders of the Lost Ark got 13. So that was your top three when it comes to the championship round with our fans.
All right. We'll stop there so we don't give away the finish of this one, but it's of course, because we apparently our listeners disagree with us because the top three vote getters for the win didn't even make it to the finals. In fact, two of them didn't even make it to the final four.
Jeez.
So send your hate tweets to me at the Fake Lou Hair or
nice.
all of us at Front Row Reviews. So let's get down to it. Here it is, our finals: Ghostbusters versus the Goonies. Craig, let's start with you. Who do you got taking this whole thing?
Well, it is a close matchup, and I do appreciate Ghostbusters. Yes. I still would have had Ferris beating them out. So, all that being said, I think I'm probably gonna lose this one, but I'm going for the scrappy kids, and I'm going for the Baby Ruth bars, and I'm going for the Goonies, and I'm going to celebrate if they win by eating a whole gallon of Rocky Road.
Nice.
Rocky Road?
How about you?
You cut out again as soon as you said the name.
Ryan, let's go.
There you go.
Two great 80s films. Iconic in their own right.
Ryan, I'm out of beer, guy.
You know, as much as I would like to say it, we saw, we kicked its ass.
Come on.
But that's not in the Goonies, though. So, hey, you guys, Goonies.
Loadings.
All right. Scott, how about you?
As those in the front row probably know, my favorite film of all time is quoted as saying, "When someone asks if you're a god, you say yes." It's a better film. It's got better special effects. It is a better comedy, and it has more staying power because, Goonies only had one movie. I kind of
the lady version was better, but I mean, it was.
Oh, shut up!
Dude.
Can I change my vote now?
Yes, please change your vote. Just to spite Craig. Ghostbusters all the way.
Okay, so I've loved movies since I can remember. And I can remember the first movie I saw in the movie theater.
Hell yeah.
And it was Ghostbusters.
For God's sake.
Oh,
And
man.
you know what, Scott? Hold on. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
We're going to props, people. Stand by. This is not a
Did you
drill.
have a proton
I got
pack?
toys. I got
Yes,
toys.
that's in my office and at work. That's in my office. Same thing. I love it.
Nice.
And if anyone wants to buy me the $400 Lego Ghost House, that would be amazing. Just buy it for me.
There it is. There's my bona fides right there. No, Goonies is great. Love it. Own it. Seen it a dozen times. Ghostbusters, to me, I agree with you, Scott. It's a better movie. It made a bigger impact upon its release. It was the second biggest movie of 1984, one of the biggest movies of the decade. Bill Murray becomes a megastar because of it. The soundtrack's a huge hit. It's absolutely 100% Ghostbusters for me. So that's going to tie it up at 2-2. So it's going to come down to the listeners.
And this is like their fourth or fifth choice.
Yeah, since we've eliminated Empire Strikes Back, Back to the Future, and Raiders of the Lost Ark, who do the viewers choose when it came down to, or the listeners choose when it came down to Ghostbusters or the Goonies?
Interestingly enough, this was a crowded field here. After you get past those first three, only 4 votes separate these two films when it came to their finals matchups. And with a 4-vote win, they are not afraid of no ghosts. The Ghostbusters, according to the fans, is our ultimate 80s movie.
All right.
I feel like I wasted 25 hours of my life. How long is this podcast?
There you have it.
And just for clarification's sake, if you want to see the picture of it, there it is.
Ghostbusters, the ultimate 80s movie. Thank you all who participated on Brackify. For those of you who didn't vote for Ghostbusters, sorry. Ghostbusters was one of the highest voted movies in terms of total votes. Interestingly enough, one of the movies that actually ranked high on total votes here was a movie that got knocked out in the first round, and that was Blade Runner. Blade Runner actually got 9 votes to win the entire thing.
Yeah.
But it only got 107 total votes. So those people who voted for it.
They were going.
What the hell am I looking at, Craig?
Craig, what are you doing?
I went to Reddit because you people annoy me. And the first post is nailing a rainbow.
Nice.
Craig is cut off, ladies and gentlemen. But okay, so this bracket is done. I did point out, I don't know if we pointed out earlier, there were 26 out of the 64 movies that actually got at least 1 vote to win the entire bracket. So I feel a little good. I feel a little vindicated to know that we did have a really strong field. We had some great movies. I want to thank everybody for participating on Brackify. The response was wonderful. And we're definitely going to do this again. And I think even we did the 90s bracket last year, but I might put those up on Brackify just so we can just see how that plays out. And we'll tout that on our Twitter page, which you can find at Front Row Reviews. Before we get out of here and say goodnight, does anybody have any shows they want to plug coming up soon? Craig, how about you?
We just recorded a Beyond the Mouse. I don't know when that is in the release schedule. It's a full news episode of Beyond the Mouse. Lots of news that broke. We talk overnight parking at Disney resorts. We talk Incredibles 2 and Wreck-It Ralph trailer and much, much more. So check out Beyond the Mouse. And then I don't know what we're doing in April yet. We did not do Coco this month because we had so much news. So we probably will pick up Coco sometime in the near future.
I love Coco.
Great.
Love Coco.
Also, Lou, your episode of Guilty Pleasures will be dropping before the month is out as well.
Excellent. Yes. Con Air is
I
in the
cannot
can.
wait to hear.
In the can, it's ready to go. It's great. We had a fun time talking about that. And also, if you tune into Con Air, right at the top, we'll give you our options for April's episode of Guilty Pleasures, which I'll give you a hint right now is all video game themed.
Oh.
So we're gonna have some fun there. So as soon as that drops, then the poll's gonna go up on Twitter, so you can be part of our April Guilty Pleasures after the March one drops.
I love the Power Glove. It's so bad.
That's going to be a whole separate podcast. I'm saving that for the 20-year anniversary. These are all movies based off of video games.
That's on my list.
Not a movie it's a guilty. I'll argue with you. That's off air. That's a guilty pleasure.
Oh, depends who records first. Hey, before we get done, something just to make Craig stay here for a little bit longer. Cavern asks for everybody, which movie do you think should have been in the tournament but wasn't?
Oh, good question. Okay. Well, Scott, you've given like 5 or 6. Craig, how about you?
Oh my goodness. God, I got to think back to the good. I don't go to me yet.
Okay. Ryan, you got anything?
Last Crusade.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So would you have put that in over Raiders then, or would you have put both of them in?
It's hard to say because Raiders they're both good, but I would say Last Crusade over Raiders just because it's the better indie film.
Okay. Scott?
Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan. Although this is the Enterprise A, which is after, but it works. Wrath of Khan. Greatest sci-fi film of all time, period.
Okay. Jeremy, any thoughts?
My head says to go with something a little more critically acclaimed. But I think just for the comedy aspects of it, I remember my dad and I always watching Weird Science all the time. And I think that's a pretty underrated 80s comedy.
Yes.
Also, just because I have to mention it as much as possible, Adventures in Babysitting, man. Come on, where was it?
Okay, but can I plug horror real quick? If we had to have an 80s horror, The Shining or Lost Boys.
One of those I fell asleep in, and it wasn't The Lost Boys.
Or Luton's. I will throw in John Carpenter's remake of The Thing as well.
You missed out last week when somebody started arguing The Thing wasn't a good movie, and I want to punch him.
Oh, come on!
I didn't argue Thing wasn't a good movie. I'm saying that Big Trouble in Little China has had more staying power than The Thing.
And I disagree.
Bullshit.
One of those still has a comic book line. One of them doesn't. Anyway, so for my part, the one in the drama section that I really wish I could have fit in because I love it. I think it's probably actually the best film of the 80s, and that's Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. And then as far as comedies go, I also have a real soft spot for Clue. I think that's definitely going to make our 80s NIT bracket, but I think all of these movies are. So you can maybe in about a month or so be on the lookout for that. But I love that question. And that's the thing, 64 movies, it's really, you think that's a wide field, but when it comes down to a whole decade's worth of great films, it gets really hard to narrow it down.
By the way.
Yeah.
Stand by me.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Back to.
Yep. Nope. Another great one. Raising Arizona could have been another good one.
Oh man,
Good Morning Vietnam is
Evil
Cameron.
Dead. Yes.
Yes, Good Morning Vietnam is another great one. There's lots of good stuff. I've got I have a whole list of movies that didn't make the cut. I'll just to rack them off real quick. Same Almost Fire, Full Metal Jacket, Beaches, Driving Miss Daisy, Do the Right Thing, Steel Magnolias, On Golden Pond, The Big Chill, Raging Bull, Cocktail, Moonstruck, Can't Buy Me Love, Mr. Mom, Police Academy, Arthur, Cocoon, Spies Like Us, Crocodile Dundee, Back to School, yada yada yada.
Little Shop of Horrors. That's why the 80s is the best cinematic decade of all time.
You know, you didn't have the other Goonies, which was the Monster Squad, but
no. There are lots of great 80s movies, so we will definitely put together maybe a 32 team NIT bracket, and we'll revisit this in another time. But do we have any other questions in the chat room, Scott, before we get out of here?
Nope. Kevin agrees with Craig's choice as well, and I agree the Monster Squad is freaking amazing.
You know, we should flashback that, or wait.
We will. That's my Halloween, and if anyone steals it, I'll kill you.
Yeah. So, Craig, just so you know, I don't have my own pod, but I guest on flashbacks. I would love to do Princess Bride.
Yeah, Ludens is going to be my main flashbacks guy. So maybe Ludens will actually force me to do flashbacks like on time.
I'd say literally we've had so many people request that movie, and Scott just hates it. So we just need to just avoid him.
Do it.
Just Ryan, yeah, Ryan, you just do it.
No one cares that I'm the host anyway, right, Jeremy?
I do personally care.
Okay.
I think
yeah,
really?
Than I am.
Really?
All right. So that is gonna do it. We got to get out of here, folks. We all have to go to bed before the snowmageddon hits us here in the Quad Cities and elsewhere in Illinois. So
not here.
Thank you all for participating and listening and staying with us for this whole thing. We had a blast doing it, and we will keep doing it until you tell us to stop doing it. So for the Front Row Network, I'm Lou Hare,
Craig McFarland,
Scott McFarland. Damn it,
Ryan Lutens,
Jeremy Geckner.
Con!
And as always, we'll see you in the front row.